If you lose, I'm just going to tell you right now.
Okay, we'll call the July meeting to order. Public notice will be read at the start of the public portion of the meeting. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balco?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco? Here. Mr. Bashada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom? Here. Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh? And Mr. Syak.
Here. Can I have a motion to retire into executive session?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Callahan. Would you read the resolution, please, Ms. Hill?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of and action upon the hereinafter specified subject matters. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items. Negotiations for the SCA, attorney-client privilege regarding the trademark, and a student matter. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
And Mr. Syak.
Yes. The meeting is closed. We'll convene again at 7:30. Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the July meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Take notice of this public meeting of the Sayreville Board of Ed, which is transmitted to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger in accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, further in accordance with NJSA 10:4-621. A copy is posted outside the Secretary's office and also filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Sayreville. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balco?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco? Here. Mr. Bashada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Syak.
Here. Can we have a summary on executive session, please?
The board discussed personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, negotiations for the SCA, attorney-client privilege regarding the trademark, and a student matter.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hill. We'll now move on to our Student Council Representative Report. Mr. Lewis is going to tell us about his trip to Boise State, where he got me this hat, which I need to loosen up so it fits. Go for it, Mr. Lewis.
Hi, everyone. Hope your summer's going good. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to talk about student body-wise as it is this summer, but I did want to fill you in on Boise State since I haven't seen you guys since the school year ended. I don't know how you guys do it with the politics. Like, I don't know. I don't see myself ever getting into it, so God bless you guys. But I thought it was a really fun process, humbling process on how the political process all works, how it. You know, it's not just one mainstream, one main level. It's a ladder. I had a ton of fun learning, not just learning about it, but through, you know, I felt it was a preparation for college, staying in the dorm for a week, getting to meet new people. So I just want to thank everyone that, you know, helped me get through that process and helped me get to that point in attending it. So. As a broad spectrum, I like the process as a whole. I don't know about politics. I don't know if that swayed me. I know, Mr. Syak, it took you in that turn to go into it. But if there's any specific questions I could answer, because I know other than that, student council is focusing on the freshman orientation. I'm excited for the football field, but other than that, that's all I have to talk about right now.
Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. And when I came back from Boise State and I decided to run for the school board, I called a friend of mine to be my campaign manager, and his words to me were, he says, you know, Kev, I really don't know a lot about politics. And my response to him immediately was, well, that's good, because I'm not getting involved in politics, I'm getting involved in education. And it was at that moment he knew he was not going to get me off the phone unless he said yes. So, thank Thank you very much. We'll move on to correspondence. We have our monthly technology work order reports and our maintenance reports. And then we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and executive sessions of June 26th?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bauka?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Dr. Labby, we'll turn it over to you for our superintendent's report.
Okay, if I can bring your attention now to Vision 2030 Finance and Infrastructure. We'll begin with, among many of the items there, I'm going to bring your attention right now to numbers 19 and 20. Basically, we're asking you to approve the change order from the original order to replace the turf field. We found a sinkhole, and it cost us about a little bit more than $9,000 to repair it. So we're asking you to approve the change order as well as the withdrawal of those additional funds from capital reserve. You can find all of that on pages 4 and 5. Numbers 32 through 37, we're asking you to approval to award a contract to U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Financing. We're going to be doing some lease purchasing, and you can see there the amount as well as the rate that we're going to get. And that's, of course, to purchase technology equipment, school buses, facility equipment, all of which are listed in numbers 34 through 37. You can see them there. And that is, you can find that on the addendum. Okay, so if you're looking on the addendum, numbers 32 through 37, the first motion is for the lease purchasing, and then everything else after that are the items that we're going to purchase through the lease purchasing. Numbers 41 through 42, we're asking you to withdraw 2 single route bids that we had a problem with, and we're asking you to give Ms. Hill, our business administrator, the authority to advertise the rebidding of those routes. You can find that as well in the addendum. Number 38, and I did go out of order there for a reason because I want to show you how we're going to allocate that. We're asking you to approve the acceptance of additional state school aid in the amount of $2,008,049 to be used for the following appropriation lines for the school year 2018-19. You can find that in the addendum, but we have it broken down here for you. It's a little hard to see. But as you can see, some of the monies that we're asking you for is for software. Chi 3000, it's a literacy software that we've been using with great success at the middle school, and we're actually seeing that in our preliminary PARC results. We're going to bring that down to grades 4 and 5. This year, we're using regularly appropriated funds for that, but with this additional state aid, we want to bring it to our 3rd grade students. We also want to pilot a great parent portal software. We're already using OnCourse and their parent portal, but there are a couple of different additional softwares that we want to pilot at the high school, which those parents tend to use the portal more than any of our other parents. We'd also like to use those additional funds for iPads and Chromebooks. That will actually bring our 1-to-1 student ratio, make our student ratio for devices 1-to-1 in grades K preschool through 5th grade, which was one of our goals in our strategic action plan that we developed as a community last September. We also want to purchase with that money some grade 6 through 8 math curriculum and instruction resources. Our preliminary PARC data is demonstrating to us that we really need to do something in addition to what we're already doing for our secondary math programs. Included in that, we want monies to go to Rutgers Behavioral Health. As we all know, social emotional development is a huge aspect that we're concentrating on, not only in this school district, across the state, across the country. We are using Rutgers Behavioral Health. We will be using Rutgers Behavioral Health at the middle school next year, and with these additional funds, we'd also like to use it at SAMSO, both of which experience a great deal of crisis, as well as both have MD programs and BD programs. Rutgers Behavioral Health will help us manage and shape the behaviors of some of our students that have challenges in that area. We also would like to use some of that monies for custodians. Right now, we are desperately in need of an additional custodian at both the SAMSO Upper Elementary School and the middle school, and that will help us out in that area as well. Along with that, we also need an additional part-time campus security monitor. Right now at SAMSO, there's 1 campus security monitor, but we basically have 2 schools there. Our preschool is up top on the 3rd floor, and our 4th and 5th graders are spread out through the building. we have a great problem when our preschoolers come in with their parents. They have to go through the main entrance, and then they have to traverse the stairs and so forth. We have a ramp and an entrance there, but they're unable to use it because we don't have a campus security monitor there. So we really need a campus security monitor there. And likewise, we need, at this day and age, we need a school safety specialist, someone that is dedicated to overseeing school security, particularly graduations and promotion ceremonies, someone that is able to, again, oversee the work of all of our campus security monitors, to make sure that our security cameras are running appropriately and so forth. And this person will also be responsible for truancy and residency investigations. Along those lines, we have a software we want to use called Navigate. It's a school security software. It will help our principals, as well as our school safety specialist and Mr. Glock Malloy, go ahead and organize and streamline all of our security drills and so forth so that we're meeting state guidelines and procedures. I mentioned earlier the rebidding of those 2 bus routes. They came in at a particular rate, and we got into a disagreement with the vendor that bid those. We decided to go out and rebid because of the fact that the vendor didn't feel that the bidding rate was appropriate, and we're very, very reluctant to go out to rebid because we feel that we're going to get much higher bid amounts than what was previously accepted. Therefore, we'd like to purchase 2 buses. A part of our strategic action plan, again, that we developed last September as a community was to increase our fleet. These 2 buses will help us increase our fleet and probably take off the road 2 more single route buses. And I believe we're down to 4.
I think we have about 8 or 9.
8 or 9? We'll be
Yeah.
down to about 8 or 9 single route buses, which, by the way, are just as expensive as our double and triples, but they're only doing a single route. So again, that will help us out tremendously. We would also like to use the funds for metal detectors and new secure vestibules at the Samso Upper Elementary School, middle school, and high school. Currently, we do not have standard secure vestibules, entrance areas, where someone can come in a controlled environment, where there is shatterproof glass, where they're able to give their ID or identification in what's called a man-trap door. Many school districts now have those vestibules, particularly at schools such as intermediate schools and middle schools and high schools. We'd like to use those funds for that, as well as to purchase metal detectors. Moving along with some of the items there, you can see we'd also like to use monies to replace our track. Already we have replaced the football turf field, but we feel that the track is also greatly in need of replacement, and those monies will go to that as well. The UES parking lot, if you've been to the UES before, whoever designed the UES did not think about the number of buses that would have to go in there. First of all, there are no walkers at the UES. It's all buses. So if you can imagine, there's no bus parking lot. So they have to line 24 buses along the side of the building. It's very hazardous, and it's very clumsy and not very ergonomically inclined. What we'd like to do is, right now, there's a playground area outside of the gymnasium, but it's only got about an inch thick of pavement. What we'd like to do is rip that up, reinforce that so that our buses can park on it and our kids can still have play recess out there on it. So we want it to double as a recess plus bus parking lot where our buses can park in safely, allow our kids to safely dismiss, go into the school, and then at the dismissal time, allow for our kids to safely board their buses and then leave in a very orderly, organized manner. So we're budgeting for that. And finally, you heard our band parents this previous meeting, as well as many meetings during the course of the school year, talking about the fact that they have plastic instruments, they have instruments that they're repairing with tape and so forth, and we'd like to dedicate a great deal of that money as well to replacing some of our band instruments. So those are the allocated funds, the areas that we would like to use those funds to allocate those funds into. Lastly, well, that is the last one for that. So any questions on on finance and infrastructure?
So Dr. Labby, just to take your analysis, and it was very good because it details exactly where the dollars are going. Just to take that up a level, first of all, out of the $2 million, $1.4 million or 70% is being invested in one-time cost items. So that means if for some reason this aid were to go away next year or be reduced, we're not saddling the district with recurring costs. It also means that next year we have the ability, if we wanted to use some of that aid for tax relief. In addition to that, with the aid that we're getting now that we're putting into our facilities, and you can see numerous facilities projects on this list, coupled with the money that we've put into capital and maintenance reserves by action of the board at our last meeting, the Finance Committee discussed this, and we're pretty confident that the referendum that we've been talking about for building envelope and security improvements that were needed for our facilities will no longer be necessary. So by allocating the money in this way, it means we're not going to have to go out for voter approval. We're not going to saddle this community with long-term debt. We're not going to have to spend money on an election, and we'll be able to make these improvements a lot quicker than we would if we would have to go out for voter approval. The other point about this is just about everything that we're allocating these funds to are consistent with our district strategic plan. So this isn't a plan that the board itself came up with. We convened in September a Vision 2030 committee consisting of parents, residents, educators, even students, who came up with a plan as to where they wanted to take the district in the next 3 years. With the infusion of this additional funding, it allows us to fulfill the items in that plan. And also, I think in my time on the board, this is probably the largest single investment we've ever made into our marching band in $100,000 worth of new instruments. And I know that that's been an issue for quite some time. Up until this point, I think the largest investment we've ever made in them is their marching band uniforms, which is around $25,000. So we're allocating it across a lot of different facets of the educational program. The Achieve 3000 program that Dr. Labby mentioned, I know when I went to school and you learned to read, you were basically broken up into individual reading groups, a high-level group, a medium-level group, and a lower-level group, and then you each read 3 different stories. The Achieve 3000 program allows classes to read the exact same story, but it adapts the story itself to the student's Lexile reading level. So if I'm a proficient reader or an advanced proficient reader, I will get Charlotte's Web, for example, at a much higher Lexile level. If I'm a struggling reader, I will also get Charlotte's Web, but I will get it at a much lower Lexile level that's more conducive to my reading style. And as the year goes on, we can modify those levels for the individual students, which is going to help them read quicker and become more proficient. So that's the types of investments that we've got planned. Questions from the board on the allocation?
Great question.
Sure.
Dr. Labby, and when you're talking about redoing the track and all that, we're doing the football field right now, if I'm correct, and it's going to be ready for the season. But at this goalpost, I guess it would be the northeast side of the field, there's a rubber section in there that they have, I guess they store things down below. There's a trap door there. There is a sinkhole over there. Is that part of the football field, or that's going to be part of the track redoing the track?
Well, I mean, I know that we found a sinkhole. I'm not sure if that's the sinkhole.
No, that's part of the D zone, which is part of the track, so it would go within that project.
That's going to be part of the
Yeah.
renovation for the track then?
And we probably overestimated the amount of money it's going to cost, we hope, to, replace the track. But, we feel it's very, very necessary, and we're hoping that because of this additional aid, we'll be able to start that probably in the fall, after football season and everything like that. Hopefully we can get that in before the spring season.
The other question with the renovation of the track, are we going to have someone come in and reevaluate the drainage issue coming down between the grandstand and the hill up there from Laurel Park?
It's not a concern that we've heard before. I know that we have CME, our engineer, who is currently conducting that assessment of the field hockey / baseball field right now. We did not have them look at any drainage issue coming from the stadium.
No, it's just, I know over the years that there has been an issue of water coming down the hill, whether it be where the field hockey, quote, baseball field is right now, but a lot of it's been attributed to the drainage coming off the stadium, because there's one spot back here as you come around a corner from the stadium towards the baseball field that has had erosion problems over the years. Jim?
When we met with CME, they did talk about the drainage issue, and they felt that what was done in the past should have worked. And I believe it's taking the drainage from the hill, whether it's from the stadium or not, from the hill, they feel that whatever they developed should have worked. Part of their assessment is going to be determining why it hasn't been working. Just speaking of the baseball field too, it's not mentioned here because it's part of capital projects, but with the money allocations to capital reserve, maintenance reserve, and emergency reserve, we are going to be able to, as Mr. Sayak mentioned earlier, accomplish many other projects, including potentially replacing the baseball field or at least repairing the baseball/field hockey field. Other things included in that would be the middle school locker rooms, the partition at the Truman School, making sure that the ventilators and the windows are all finished over at the Arlett School, and other outstanding projects that we've been focusing on. We want to make sure we get all those projects done, and we can be able to do that with this aid, as well as the monies that we're going to be putting in capital, maintenance, and emergency reserve.
Any other questions on the allocation?
I have a question. You're done?
Yes.
Do we currently have any metal detectors? Did we buy any yet?
We have handheld wands.
Oh, and what's the difference between the wands and this?
The handheld wands, basically, for instance, if we wanted to use metal detectors to have all of our students at the high school walk through, we right now with the wands, we have to spot. We have to do spots. We can't have every child come up and wand them. So basically, our campus security monitors, if they see someone with a funny-looking bag or somebody with a longer coat, that might be somebody that they wand, and so forth. Now, all visitors, they're supposed to wand as well as wand the bags and so forth. With the metal detectors, with the secure vestibules, all of the secure vestibules are going to have metal detectors built into them. So any visitors coming in, you have to go through that metal detector that's in the secure vestibule. But we would like the portable ones for our students when they come in the morning, whether they come off a bus or they come into the front door, that they walk through a metal detector. And just in a very orderly fashion, come in. And then any students where the metal detector goes off, then we can actually wand them and be a little bit more precise in terms of if they're carrying anything that could potentially be dangerous.
So these metal detectors here are portable metal detectors?
And they could also be used, the reason why we want them portable too is we could use them for shows. We could use them for graduations, football games, basketball games. They can be moved around. That's why.
And how many do you get for $35,000?
I believe we got, I want to say 5 or 6.
Yeah, it depends on how much they come in at, so we estimated between $5,000 and $8,000, so it would depend on the ultimate
Yeah.
cost.
We
per-
would
per
we would
unit.
lease like 2 to 3 at the middle school and 3 to 5 at the high school.
So you would want 6 to 8 of them?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this should cover 6 to 8?
You need 2 at the high school alone because the buses come in the back, so we would need 2 there, and then we would need 1 for each entrance they come in the front. And the middle school, it's such a large entrance area, we feel we need 3, or the line of kids coming in would be too long.
Okay, and the Navigate, the school security software you said was for the principals, it would help the principals?
Definitely. I mean, not only that, right now, what our principals do, if they're going to run a drill, they have to send out a number of different correspondence to different people, letting them know, alerting them of what's going on. And Mr. Glock-Malloy can jump in. He knows it a little bit better than I do. But essentially, what it does is it streamlines the process for us. We can use the data. We can export the data directly for state reporting purposes. But if an event is scheduled, the notification of that event can go to all the appropriate people, within a click. But Mr. Glock-Malloy.
Yeah. Beyond that, it's also designed to meet a lot of the recommendations that the state's put forth. It helps with teachers and other staff members in the building being able to issue an emergency request, not just the principal or the secretary in the main office. It helps with accounting for students once an evacuation is done, once you're off-site. And it also has a component to help with both reunification after an emergency event, as well as giving police and other emergency management staff the ability to see floor maps and images of rooms as they go into a building in the event of an emergency.
So did the principals review the software and want this? Were there other choices, or is this the only one out there?
This is the best product we've seen in this area. This is certainly not the only product. There are tons of different products that address various items in emergency management. This was a pretty all-inclusive one. It was originally recommended at a demonstration at the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office And then we had an internal demo for our principals and vice principals.
And they're on board with this?
The ones I've spoken to, yes.
Okay. And another question, the one-to-one, I know you said this is only one-to-one for preschool to fifth grade. Is there a need for one-to-one? Isn't there a need for the one-to-one beyond fifth grade?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there is a need. Obviously, we've talked about end of life before. We know that the park is going away, but we don't know what's going to replace it. For all we know, it's going to be another, electronic assessment. However, when we meet regularly with the SEA during Ed Council, nearly every single Ed Council meeting that comes up, the teachers ask for more devices.
Right.
They feel that with all this software, the very powerful softwares that we have within the district that are being utilized to enhance student achievement, making sure that every teacher has a device to use whenever they need or want to use it is essential. We're happy to say with these monies, we'll be able to do that K through 5. 6 through 12, we're helped by the fact that many of those kids bring in their own devices, so we're able to capitalize on the bring your own device policy. However, it's still a goal of ours to eventually have enough devices to be one-to-one 6 through 12, and how far off are we from that, Mr. Glock-Malloy?
I'd have to bring up the specific numbers, but with every allocation that we've given, both in regular budgets and additional aid, we've deployed devices to every grade level. We've just been able to close the gap pre-K to 5, one-to-one at this point. But
So what is our ratio now for 6 through 12?
if you give me a minute, I can bring it up.
So just for a philosophy, why wasn't there a decision to put more devices for 6 through 12 to use some of this money to go further? I look at the one-to-one as a very high priority, me personally. So I would like to see more money go towards one-to-one.
There's a lot of things that we need those monies for.
Right, and I know it's a matter
So
of
we're
priorities.
we're spreading the monies over the areas that we feel that are in most need of it. That's basic answer.
And so how much more money would you need to go further in the one-to-one devices? What are,
Oh, much
I
more.
don't know what our ratio is now just in 6
I
to
believe Mr.
12.
Glock-Malloy said at our finance and infrastructure meeting was,
It was 350,000.
yeah, over $300,000.
Yeah, with this allocation.
Additional to the 100, or it would be 200 more you'd need?
No, I think it was in addition to the 100.
Yeah.
And just to, one of the lease purchases that we're approving tonight also includes $160,000 in devices as well.
So that makes $260,000 in devices this year for a school
Right,
district.
but all of that money still gives us one-to-one only in pre-K through 5. And
Right, but
everything that's been
as I said
allocated.
earlier, the demand for the devices is not as high at the middle school and high school level because the kids use their own devices.
Okay, and
But
do you know what-
just to that point, we are putting devices at every grade level between the local regular budget this year and what we hope to put with state aid. The ratios at the UES going into the start of this year will be 1.29 to 1. The middle school will be 1.3 to 1. And the high school will be 1.53 to 1.
So it's 1.5 students to one device. So we're getting close, guys.
We're bringing in about
It's not
800.
one device per 2 students. We're
Right,
below
but-
that.
Right, when you say, I know you said going in, but you said there's money in the regular budget. So will that change the 1.3 and the 1.53, or did you include that?
These numbers that I have were based on our allocations from the regular budget, nothing with state aid.
Right.
So as he mentioned, the SAMSO now will go down to 1-to-1.
Oh, the samples
with
go
the
to
new money,
1-to-1.
with this
Right,
new
'cause
money,
they're
it-
up through 5th.
Yeah,
Right,
it'll
so-
go down 1-to-1. And we're also going to be putting other devices in the upper grades too, so those will go down. But as he said before.
But they're going, I guess, wait, I just want to make this simple, the question. I think you're complicating it.
Okay.
The 1.3 number and the 1.53 number are numbers after the devices that come out of the regular budget are purchased.
Correct.
Okay, so that's where we stand as far as I'm concerned now. Once all the money's spent, we're going to be at 1.3 and 1.53.
No, not including the money we're putting in now.
Right, but the money you're
Before
putting in
state
now,
aid.
you're not
Before the
putting
new
in.
state aid, those are the figures.
Right, but we're not changing the numbers in the middle school and the high school with the state aid, right? You said that's only for pre-K to 5, to
It
5th
will
grade.
bring pre-K to 5 to 1-to-1, but there
Right.
will also be devices going into the middle school and high school.
Right.
Right,
So
but
those
the
numbers
question
will-
was, does the devices going into the middle school and high school result in the 1.3 and the 1.53, or will they bring those numbers down?
They
from
will
the-
bring those numbers down.
To what?
With state aid, once we have the money allocated, we have to go out for quotes and get an estimate.
Depends on how many devices we end up
Right.
getting.
Right, so you must have an idea of what you're gonna end
I
up with.
estimate in total between the regular budget and the state aid will bring in about 800 and
No, like, how
40
much
some odd
better do you
devices.
think these 1.3 and 1.53 numbers will get once you spend the budgeted money? I mean, you must have thought about that when you budgeted it.
we're going to put, it was 100,000?
Yeah.
It'll give us about another 50 devices to put into the middle school and high school if we bring the UES to a 1-to-1 ratio, roughly. So one cart to the middle school, one cart to the high school, and then the UES will go to 1-to-1.
Right, but the UES doesn't go to 1-to-1 till after this 2 million is spent, correct?
Correct. The UES would get about 300 if we did the state aid, the UES would get an additional 300 devices roughly. The middle school and the high school would get about one cart each.
So by the end of the next school year, we'll be 1.3 in the middle school and 1.53 at the high school, is that what you're saying?
At the start of this school.
At the start of the school year. So by the end of the year, those numbers should decrease as we purchase more devices
Correct.
for the middle school and the high school.
We'll add an additional cart to the middle school and high school if state aid's allocated to it.
Assuming we don't get more students, because then that's going to throw the number off.
Right. So I guess this is where my first question was, isn't there any money in here on this that we could pull out and put more devices into the middle school and the high school?
Outside of the 100,000.
Outside of the 100,000?
The other consideration, and I know that Ms. Hill and I have talked about this, each year we bring them in, we do face end of life, and the more devices we bring in a single year, the more devices we will be replacing in a single year somewhere in the future.
Yeah,
So
but-
spreading out the purchase to different years does help.
Well, it helps with that, but it doesn't help the kids that are here now,
That's correct.
which is,
The answer to your question, as far as I'm concerned, my recommendation is no. My recommendation is the money that we've spread out is essential in all the areas that we placed it.
Any other comments or questions?
The two buses that are in here, is the goal to have them on the road in September with drivers, or?
No, we would likely have to rent buses for the month of September, and then in October, we would get the buses because of the
So the plan is to
timing.
hire drivers in August and
Yes,
rent buses until the buses come in?
yeah.
Now, last year, I thought we bought a van. Did it ever come in?
It just came in.
A year
The
and,
van for maintenance, and
Yes.
yeah, it just came in this week.
okay.
Yeah.
Did they give us a year later model? It's an 18, okay. What's that?
GM has some issues with building vans, with cutbacks, and they also with the dealership.
Oh,
So they kept putting it off. We're supposed to get it built for Christmas, never happened. Got built in June, and we received it, and we're about 2 weeks ago.
Any other questions on the
Custom
allocation?
made.
what?
Custom
I
made.
see that. Nice, Jim. Good job.
Any other questions under finance?
I have another, well, I have a question to ask you, but for this state aid, was there any discussion about tax relief with this money? Did you have any discussion as to, since we went over the 2% cap, was there any discussion at the finance meeting?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
And
when you break it down to a dollar, $1.70 a week, tax relief per household, we thought this was the much more prudent way to go for our students. It's really what it came down to,
it would have been $1.70?
a week per household.
But there was even a more practical issue in terms of why we couldn't give it as relief. We were informed on Wednesday
That's true.
of last week that we had to make a decision by Friday if we wanted to give it back as tax relief, which is 48 hours. We can't convene a meeting of the board in 48 hours because of the notice requirement. So by allocating it to the one-time items that we hit, the $1.4 million, in theory, if the board wanted to, they could then, not having those recurring costs for next year, use that $1.4 million for tax relief if the board so desired.
Okay. This is more of a financial question. I know you said you thought you might have over budgeted for the track. If that money is over.
We hope.
well, we hope, and well, I'm going to be positive about it, okay, just for a second. If you did over budget and it doesn't, you don't need $500,000, since you're budgeting it in Fund 12, it can only stay in Fund 12?
Well, if it goes into capital projects, then yeah, it could stay in there, and then it would either go into excess surplus at the end of the year, or it could go into a reserve account. But Mr. Colmansberger actually got a quote from somebody maybe a year or so ago, and it came in at about $425,000 at that point. So I don't think if I've over budgeted, it's not by much.
Okay, so if you had money left, because there's always been an issue with the, in the stands, you know, like where the announcer is, that pathway, there's always talk about drainage, there's always water up there. And actually, the stands aren't in that great shape. Can the money be used to fix the stands at all, or?
That was fixed 2 years ago, I think.
Possibly.
That was fixed? Jimmy,
Yeah,
Jimmy
it's
said,
okay.
Mr. Colmansberger is saying that was fixed.
It was all fixed, so there's no,
On the top, it's fixed, but there's
So there's
still
no-
issues in some of the stands. I
in some of the
believe.
stands. And then if you go on the very bottom, when you walk, like where the fence is, I mean, that pathway is pretty crappy.
So
Can you
I
use the
don't know
money
that
to
I
fix
could
that?
use it for that. However, what I will say is if we are able to put monies into maintenance reserve, we could use maintenance reserve to repair those items.
To repair them?
Yes.
Because the bottom of that.
Right, because
is-
that's not a capital project.
That would just be a
That's
repair.
regular maintenance. So we could take money from maintenance reserve if we have it available to do those kinds of things.
And could you do it like when the track is being done? I'm looking at it so you don't upset.
Right, to do it
more
kind
than
of all at
once.
one time.
Right,
Potentially, yeah.
okay. I have a couple questions on the other finance,
Finance.
if nobody else has any questions on this. Do you have any questions? Are you done?
Anything else on allocation? Okay, finance.
All right, the revenue partners, JSJD Media, is this the same company we use now?
The website, yeah, we had only board approved the contract through June 30th, so this is to renew them for the whole school year.
All right, was there any change in
No.
the margins or anything? No. All right, and I had one other question, if I can find it.
While Mrs. Bacco's looking for other question, I need to abstain on the check for CME Associates on the bill list.
Yep, I think that was the last question. Okay, that's it.
Okay, any other questions on finance?
Just a comment that for the public and everyone to know about in the board, Bergen County received 15% of the $8.7 billion in state aid. Remember, I made comments over the last several meetings that everything always goes north of the Raritan River. Well, there's your prime example. So that comes out to be roughly $1.3 billion into Bergen County. Is it fair? Hell no. But a side note, that Chesterfield got their allotment, they're up to $1.some million extra, and Pemberton, which is an Abbott district, lost $900,000.
And Mr. Bishad, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how this funding was allocated, because I understand what their intent is, but I'm still not getting it.
Could it be that there's that many more schools in Bergen County versus here?
I think
Could it be that?
that's part of it,
I
but
don't
I mean,
know.
and part of it too is equalizing the ability to pay in a district with the amount of state aid they get, and Bergen County gets very little state aid in their districts.
Well,
But they also have a tremendous ability to pay, so.
Yeah, well, Jersey City is your prime example, if, not to go away from this agenda. Jersey City just added a 1% payroll tax to allocate the loss of revenue from the school, New Jersey schools allotment, because they're going to lose, I forgot how many millions or millions of dollars.
Right.
So it's about time that they can afford to pay for, instead of stealing from the other districts. Let me correct that term, instead of an allotment going to the other districts.
Any other comments on finance?
I know what the other question was. The student climate account, after tonight's allocation, is there any money left in that? Do you know if there's any money left in that climate account?
Offhand, I don't know. I would think so,
Yeah,
but
quite a bit of money in there.
Yeah, I
There's
think there
still
still
quite a
is.
bit of
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. I think there's $1,80,000.
Yes.
There's a lot of money in there.
All right, hearing no other questions on, yes?
I have a question, Dr. Labby, number 29. Could you explain to me why we're approving the senior prom again so early in the school year?
We had this discussion with our high school administration, including one member of our administration that has been responsible over the years for planning these events. There's a couple of different factors at play. Number one, for a venue that we would need for a large school like this, it's very competitive. There are a lot of school districts, who are competing for dates for some of these venues that are as large as we would need them to be. Number two, testing comes into play. They mentioned the fact that park testing was a big factor in this, as well as AP testing and so forth. So they felt that based upon the dates that were available and the testing dates that were out there, as well as some of the other dates that were out there, including, as we've talked about before, the senior trip, that this was the best date possible.
Have they secured the venue already? Because we had this discussion as well.
I believe that they've given some form of commitment. I don't believe it is a signed contract, but I believe they have to. Again, if they don't give some kind of, and sometimes these things are done well in advance. If they don't give some form of commitment, then they'll lose their date.
Right, because as we had discussed before, I
And,
know.
I specifically talked about June, and that particular venue, they are saturated with wedding requests in June.
Yeah.
And
I
May
was
too.
thinking
May
about
is a
that
very
too,
popular
we
wedding date
spoke.
too. And, back in the day, not many people got married on Fridays and so forth, but now, because of the fact that it's a little bit less expensive, people are getting married on Fridays and Sundays and so forth. So that they're also competing with.
Dr. Labby, how far in advance do we don't do this annually, right? Do we go 2 or 3
Oh,
years
yeah,
out?
they go about a year and a half in advance to try to book these dates.
So right now, they say that incoming sophomores have a date or a venue.
They're trying, yeah,
rather,
they try to get
Good.
dates as early as possible because other school districts are trying to get them.
Sure.
And that's where it becomes very complicated. They have to be reliant upon when they feel SAT testing is going to be, when they feel that park testing is going to be, AP testing, when they're going to do the senior trip and so forth. But we had a pretty lengthy discussion about it just yesterday.
Okay. But
And we did express,
Yeah, is
we
there
did
any
express
effort
to the
being
high school
made to push
administration
back
that,
if they can?
we feel it's important for our kids to have these experiences a little bit later in the school year. For instance, the fact that the senior prom is going to be on May 10th, well, one would guess that the junior prom is probably going to be in April sometime. So we kind of feel that those, important dates for these kids need to be pushed back a little bit further toward the end of the year, if at all possible. So we did express that to our high school administration. They clearly understood why we were asking for that, and they did say that they would work with their advisors to try to see if, we can secure dates that are a little bit later in the school year for both of those programs.
Yeah, because I understand it has to be done in advance, but Mr. Lewis is going to agree with me on this one. Once you have the prom, everybody's done, right?
Yeah.
So then we're babysitting
Well,
instead
and they
of
didn't,
teaching.
we did bring that up, and the high school administration didn't agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
They felt that there were some other things that were just as important, particularly in a seniors year, like the senior barbecue, there's all kinds of different things, the senior trip. They felt that there were a number of other types of activities that would continue to motivate kids. However, we do know too that motivation for our seniors is a little bit rough as soon as you turn the corner. Many of them have already been accepted into colleges and so forth. So, but they did understand why we were asking, and they did express to us that they would do their best in the future.
And Dr. Labby, to that point, because I think it's a good one, and someone who I know suggested this to me, and I never thought about it before, but have we ever given thought to switching the order of the junior and senior prom? Because to your point, the seniors, if they have their prom, let's say in early May, still have a trip and the senior breakfast and a whole bunch of other things, not to mention, as you indicated, they get senioritis sometimes in February. I'm still recovering from mine like 25 years later. But if you do the junior prom, let's say in June, with the senior prom earlier, you're not contending with the senior trip because the juniors don't go on the senior trip. The juniors still have a whole nother year to look forward to. They've got every reason to continue to stay engaged. Might be something to look at to swap them.
We can. I mean, it doesn't negate the fact that, many of these places that they're looking to have their events at are also, having weddings and things like that at them as well. And June, again, is saturated with weddings.
Right. But that's more of a, in terms of keeping the students engaged.
Yeah, but
if
we
you
can
swap the
definitely,
two.
we can definitely continue to communicate to them and let them know that feel free to reverse the order if they feel necessary.
Mr. Lewis, what are your thoughts?
I'll have to think about that one, but,
Good move.
yeah. I
They
did-
taught you a lot at Boys State.
I did want to ask a question, just one final question on the one-to-one. Will we ever get to a point where students will, like, kind of get their own Chromebook or say for the year and then return it? And can that, like, kind of split up the budget in that way too, so we're not having this sort of problem?
I'm not one to ever say never, but the school districts that have been doing that has not been very successful. You can imagine that once you give a device to someone, the chances of that device coming back in good condition then at the end of the year, those devices take a beating when kids take them home. What I can tell you, though, is within the next several years, there'll probably be a class set of devices in those classrooms so that when you come into class, your teacher can say, grab a Chromebook. And we're going to use Chromebooks and so forth. But I do know I have a lot of colleagues across the state who have tried in their districts giving kids either a laptop, giving kids a Chromebook at the beginning of the year. And the condition that those devices come back in, for the most part, they try to sell them back to the kids because they're in that bad a condition. So I don't know if Mr. Glock-Malloy wants to add anything to that, but I can't foresee us doing anything like that.
There's a lot of factors to consider with that: insurance, warranties, repairs.
I was just going to say,
Staff
cover,
to do the
warranty,
repairs.
increase the cost significantly.
So it would be, it's on our strategic plan right now to get our buildings, all of them, to a one-to-one ratio. To go beyond that to take-home devices is almost a completely different strategic plan, because there's a lot of other back-end components to think of at that time. Again, it's not a never, it's just.
Yeah, I didn't say never.
The original roadmap is to get one-to-one devices in the buildings.
Yeah, I was just asking because I know some friends that are from different districts, and they have that policy. They actually like it. They have their own thing. They return it. Sometimes I feel like maybe it's their own, so maybe they protect it more. Like the ones that we have in classrooms, they're still getting beaten. So we still have to replace them. We have two different sets. We had the gray ones and we had the new black ones this year.
So we do have some students, because of their IEPs, they actually get a device to take home. And when I tell you the condition of some of these devices that they come back in, it's rough. But I do see your point. If I was a student, I'd want that too. And again, I didn't say never. At this point, what we're really trying to focus on is a classroom environment where every teacher has a set, so that when they're teaching whatever class they're teaching, they can just tell their kids, go get a Chromebook, rather than having to schedule out a cart of Chromebooks ahead of time.
Mr. Lewis, what percentage of, would you say, the students at the high school have their own devices each day? And I would say a tablet, right? Not their phone so much, but a tablet, we could actually do something.
Yeah, I would say most of the students do. Not a lot of the students bring their own device. Like I know some students will bring their own laptop instead of using the Chromebook for that day.
Okay.
But obviously, most of the students do have them at home. Obviously, some of them don't, so that would help, I think. But most do. Not everyone brings them. Sometimes phones are utilized, but tablets are rare.
They are.
And actually bringing them to school, probably laptops or like Chromebooks or MacBooks are more. They're brought in more. So.
And Mr. Esposito, in the classes that I've observed at the high school where technology has been used, the teacher will say, if I have Chromebooks over here if you want to use them, or you can use your own device.
Gotcha.
I would say at least half of the kids just use their phones.
Yeah, I was
They're
just
they're
gonna
more
interrupt
comfortable
and say-
using their own
Yeah,
devices than
sure.
they are
Powerful.
using the
Sure, more
Chromebooks.
powerful, exactly.
Yeah, they really
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, that's great, it's good to know.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we want to go one-to-one then? I
So
don't
can
know.
you do everything that these kids are doing on a Chromebook, they could do on their smartphones?
But
Manny?
the phone is, there's, sometimes obviously there's connection issues, and then the phone policy as a whole is, depending on if a teacher wants to use the phone or not. Sometimes you can't use it in class, sometimes you can, so.
But doesn't our bring your own device policy allow the students to do that, correct?
Yeah.
Only with the
but-
teacher's
but-
discretion.
With the teacher's discretion, but I think what Mr. Lewis is saying is some teachers allow the kids to use their own devices and some teachers
Yeah.
don't. And other teachers don't allow any devices at all. It's all based upon the teacher. And there are times when the teacher will say, you're going to use your devices for this lesson, you can use your device. But then there are times when the teacher will say, I don't want you to take out your devices, keep your devices in your in your bag or on your person.
Okay, but that's just because of the lesson, because of the lesson. that
Different
it's
type of
used.
lesson, yeah.
Mr. Vaca?
Eric, number 33, we're buying Acer Chromebooks and HP Chromebooks. Is there any reason we're not buying all HPs or?
Yes. In fact, there was, without even getting to the HPs and the Acers are actually different devices. The Acers were a two-in-one, almost a touch tablet style device, so they were both a Chromebook with a keyboard as well as touch.
They're convertible.
And that was something that we looked to push to the younger grades as opposed to using an iPad. It gives them that touch interaction that's easier for the younger students to work with as opposed to just the keyboard mouse structure. The HP did have a touch-enabled device, but the Acer was significantly more cost-effective with the touch-enabled. But the HP was more cost-effective than the traditional Chromebook.
Any other finance questions?
One thing, Mr. Sack, you mentioned about the prom. If I
Yes.
remember correctly, several years, and it's been ongoing, we've had the SAT test
Yes.
Saturday after the junior prom on Friday night. You know, that's something that you had brought up. Maybe we can look into that, of rescheduling the prom so it doesn't affect the students that do participate in the SAT test on Saturday.
I think we have addressed that one, correct?
Yeah, and it's tough because they sometimes have to commit to these places almost a year and a half in advance. And they do their best to coordinate with Ms. Sokola the dates of the SATs, but sometimes it's too far out.
And for this year, it does not conflict with it, and it has not for the past several years.
And if you have the
They've been
junior
on-
prom in June, it won't conflict with the SATs.
There's SATs in June, too.
Hey, our junior prom was in here, we never had an issue.
That's right.
We
Exactly.
had it whenever we wanted.
That's true, because we had it on Saturday after the SATs.
Right.
There you go. Any other comments on finance? Next,
Wow. Okay, student achievement. Number one, we're asking you to approve a revision to the 2018-19 marking period, back-to-school night, and conference calendars. We had already asked you to approve this, but we noticed a couple errors that we revised. And numbers 2 and 3, which can be found on page 9, we're asking you to approve the 2018-19 district mentor and professional development plans, which is an annual recommendation that we make to you. Any questions on student achievement? Seeing none. Going to governance, we're asking you to approve an agreement with Rutgers Graduate School of Applied Professional Psychology to participate in a paraprofessional behavioral support coaching project. We're always looking to provide professional development to our staff, including our paraprofessionals who do an amazing job supporting our teachers in the classroom. And Mr. Nasser did a wonderful job of finding this project, which in essence is a grant. By participating in this project, our school district will be getting professional development for our paraprofessionals. So we thank Mr. Nasser for his resourcefulness with regard to that. That can be found on page 10 if you're interested. On number 5, which can be found in the addendum, we're asking to approve several different policies and regulations of a very important nature. We understand, Board of Education members, that we sent you these a little bit late, but they are very, very important for us to try to get approved, if possible, prior to the beginning of the school year. The first one is our revision to our evaluation of individual student performance. Particularly with regard to, there are some language changes where we changed the Common Core content standard to the New Jersey state standards. But there are more qualitative or substantive types changes where we include standards-based grading, which had never been included before. And we also include how we're going to evaluate in terms of class participation, homework, tests and quizzes and so forth. We did significantly change the weights to those. In fact, homework is now only weighted 5% with regard to that. And included in that, you can see policy 6154, we did make a substantial revision to our homework and makeup work policies, particularly our homework policy. And Finally, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, 5131.1. The only substantial change to that is one that's in alignment with the new anti-bullying statute language changes. Within those language changes, it states that now administrators within schools can make a determination based upon facts whether to actually launch an HIB investigation. As we all know, based upon our HIB numbers, anytime someone said that they or their child was being harassed, intimidated, or bullied, we were forced by law to launch an investigation. This now gives our administrators some discretion. So as you can read within that policy, it clearly states now, based upon the language change in the anti-bullying statute, our administrators will have discretion based upon the facts that they are presented with to actually determine whether to launch an HIB investigation or not. Any questions on Vision 2030 governance?
Yeah, I would like to, if I could, I would not like to finalize that at this meeting. I didn't get a chance myself to read through it, and there's a lot to, I think that was mentioned anyway, we finalize it in August.
Yeah, let me just explain the process. So we got the policies. The policies were actually a result of a district committee which was convened under Dr. Shediak's direction. So once those policies were prepared, they went to our Student Achievement Committee, which reviewed them on Tuesday. They then went to the Policy Committee, which reviewed them on Wednesday, and you got them last night. Policies by our bylaws have to go through 2 readings before the Board of Education. So in order to put them in place for September, they needed to come to the board tonight and then also be read in August. Our bylaws allow us to waive the first reading and adopt on second, but that would also have only allowed the public one opportunity to view the policy. So by getting them on the agenda tonight, we give the public an opportunity, as well as any of our teachers, to digest these policies. We approve them on first reading tonight, and then in August, we're free to modify them, we're free to vote no on them, we're free to approve them as is, we can do whatever we want, and if they're approved either as is or approved in a modified fashion, they would still go in effect in September. If they're not approved, obviously, they would not go in effect in September. But this is a way to get them in place for the September school year.
Gotcha.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Question, you said this, when was that statute changed for bullying? Is this like a recent change?
No, it changed, I believe, back in the fall of last year, or at least winter of last year.
Presented back then, I believe it went into effect for either June 30th, July 1, somewhere in that frame. It was designed to correspond with the next school year.
Well, it wasn't, it was not going to go into effect until July 1, but I believe that the
Approved by the legislature.
legislature, I want to say like December or November,
Yeah, and I
to go
think
into effect for the 18-19 school year.
And school boards had new language available, I think, on the, like, April of 18. It was on their website.
Okay, so it was for this coming school year that it was for effect? We
Correct.
couldn't have done it last year?
Couldn't
So
have.
it's just
Correct.
for this year, so it's new for this year?
Right.
Okay. With respect to the other policies, I didn't get to read them either, so I'm going to abstain on them. I don't feel comfortable voting on something that I didn't get to read.
Yeah, there's a spelling issue on that one. Do I need to make note of it?
We
here?
can make that correction. It's established is spelled incorrectly, but we'll make that correction.
That's on the student,
That was on the,
the student
Yeah.
assessment.
yes, I think there's too many Bs in that established. And Dr. Labby, you forgot, for Mr. Lewis's information, the most important piece of the new homework policy. Dr. Labby's not paying attention to me.
It's Ms. Hill's fault.
I indicated that you forgot to inform Mr. Lewis of the most important provision of the homework policy.
Oh, there are homework-free times now. In the homework policy, we're no longer giving homework on Fridays that's due on Monday, or on days before a vacation or an extended holiday break.
So the homework is now 5%?
5% of your total
For
grade.
all-
A max,
The Met for all schools? And
assuming that the board adopts these in
Yes.
August.
but what about the quarterly? Will that be lowered?
This was
Push
just
it now,
homework.
buddy.
We just focused on homework. Nice try, Mr. Lewis, always thinking.
He learned negotiating at Boys State, I tell you.
More than he went on to.
He
Left a good kid, look at him.
And that beard, too.
I noticed that, and he lost the bow tie. The bow tie's gone.
Well,
Although
it's
it's
summer. He is wearing summer attire.
It's summer.
And he can get away with that shirt.
There you go.
Does that Friday count for like projects or reports or
There-
anything with a long-term?
They do distinguish in their
Yes.
projects, so
Okay.
so if something's been given out for, it's due in 2 weeks, then yeah, it can be due on a Monday.
That is okay.
Or even several days, but nothing.
Nothing that
Can
can
be
be
as-
done on a Friday for a
But the
month.
days of giving 2 pages of math homework on a Friday are done. You know,
Okay.
we want our kids to have time to be kids.
I'll read it first, then I'll come back.
It says it in there, it says Monday through Thursday.
Any other questions on governance? Dr. Labby, back to you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and finally, on personnel. Number one, as always, we're asking you to accept the retirement of a beloved staff member, and these are naturally very bittersweet. So we're asking you to approve the retirement of Marta Sagermeister. Mrs. Sagermeister has worked for the district for the last 16 years at the Eisenhower Elementary School. She came to Sayreville after a long teaching career in New York. Marta has worked as a special education teacher, providing in-class resource center support, as well as pull-out replacement support over her tenure here in Sayreville. The last several years, she has worked very closely with Ms. Vella, Ms. Hessner, Mr. Dye, as an inclusion teacher. Her colleagues have always found Ms. Sagermeister willing to share her knowledge, as well as possessing a willingness to learn new curricula, computer programs, and best instructional practices. She prides herself in being a strong and avid advocate for her students. Marta is able to advocate so strongly for them because she develops a rapport with her students that allows her to help them meet and exceed their expectations. Her students and her colleagues will miss her incredibly. We wish her nothing but the absolute very best as she begins this new and very exciting chapter in her life. So on behalf of the Sayreville Public Schools, we thank Mrs. Sagermeister for all that she's done for the students that she's worked with for the past 16 years and all that she's done for the school district and our community. And we wish her nothing but the very best in her retirement. Numbers 11, 14, and 42, we're asking you to approve to hire new certificated and non-certificated staff for the 2018-19 school year. You can find all of those names on pages 14 and 15 and the addendum. Numbers 29 through 32, you can also find on pages 22 through 26. We're asking you to approve the transfer of certificated staff members. And I will point out there, you will find long lists from elementary schools. Those transfers are just the transfers of teachers that will be looping. Because our kindergarten teachers are paid out of a different account, we do have to actually transfer them. So those that last list, you'll see like several teachers from each elementary school. Those are just the teachers that are going from kindergarten to first grade or first grade to kindergarten because of the looping. I do want to also point out that you'll see the name Amanda Goodschmidt, and she's listed there as a nurse. I apologize for that. That is a typo. She's actually a math teacher. So if you find Amanda, I believe that is item, she's on the addendum. It's item number 32? Number 42, yes, up there, new hires, Amanda Gutschmidt. She is a high school math teacher who is actually replacing Mrs. Zarowski, who became our new vice principal.
Any questions on personnel? Also, Dr. Labby, and speaking of typos, and it may have been corrected, I saw it and I forgot to call you. Somewheres in the agenda, we are sending a student to the Center for Long Life Learning. I would like to go there as well, but I believe we're sending the student to the Center for Lifelong Learning. So if that wasn't corrected, if we could just make that notation.
Do you know offhand which number it was?
It was probably toward the end of finance and infrastructure.
Yeah, it's probably towards the end of finance.
Page 6.
Was it changed?
No. Page 6.
Nope, I can make that change.
There we go. right, any other questions on the superintendent's report?
But for the personnel, like number 4, 5, the changes in all these salaries, are these all like mistakes that were made that we're correcting?
Correct.
For 4, there's a whole attachment of people. Were those mistakes?
Yeah,
And-
those were mistakes with regard to confusion on the new collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, so they were just done wrong the first time?
Correct.
Okay, and.
And I believe in that particular case, it was people that were on step M. They were actually moved up when they're not supposed to be moved up.
Correct. So that was done wrong at the last time we voted then?
Correct.
And for 5, the same thing?
Yes.
The computer technicians, those were done wrong, so.
Yeah, any
we're redoing them?
revisions were ones, you know,
Okay.
Any other questions on the superintendent's report? Okay, hearing none, we'll take public participation on agenda items only. If you wish to speak on any item on the agenda, please come to the microphone. Okay, hearing none, we will.
Hold on.
Yes? No, that's right. And just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Mary Kenny, 240 Garrity Street. My question is just about looping. Is that just K-1 this year, and is it something that the district is considering doing in the upper grades? And has it been done here in the past?
this is actually our third year of looping.
So they've been looping K-1?
Yeah. We piloted it 1 year, and last year was our first full year. No, so it's 4 years, really. We piloted it 1 year, and this is our third full year of doing it. And we're seeing incredible results from our first graders, especially with regard to their literacy increases. Yeah, I mean, you know, we're going to continue with the looping. People have, you know, inquired about, will we be looping in other grades? We're not there yet. We haven't got to that point where we're discussing that yet. But I will say this, based upon the results that we're seeing from the K-1 loop, it does make it very tempting to consider looping in other grades as well.
I'm only speaking from my experience as a third grade teacher, having had students loop 1, 2. As a third grade teacher, I wasn't a huge fan of that. I felt like the students got too comfortable in that, like, in the whole beginning of the year, everything I said, they would say, that's not what my teacher said. I say, I know, honey, but I'm your teacher now. You know, so it was like a huge transition, and I found that students, you know, all teachers have their strengths. So if you have a teacher who has a math strength, for 2 years, they have a great math strength. Or for 2 years, they may have a great language strength, but they didn't always get both of them. So I think K-1 is a whole different ballgame. I think as they get older, I'm not a huge fan, but I was just wondering what the.
Yeah, we're not there yet in terms of any other grades. I mean, we're just continuing to collect data on the K-1 loop. By the way, we have heard the same feedback from our second grade teachers. A little bit harder for them when kids have been within, you know, a certain group for 2 years. But we also felt, based upon, you know, the age level of those kids, where it is so important to maintain consistency over a 2-year period, and particularly because of the fact that they're just starting to learn how to read. And things have changed so much. I mean, you know, when you and I were going to kindergarten, you just needed to know your letters. These kids are reading at 3 and 4 levels when they leave kindergarten. So the idea is to keep the ball rolling as they go into first grade, and we're clearly seeing those results in first grade. But beyond that, we're not there yet.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else for public on agenda items only? Okay, we'll close public, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Rubio. Any comments on the superintendent's report?
Fine report.
From a fine
Thank you, Mrs.
superintendent.
Bloom.
Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Okay, A number 38, I'm going to vote no on. C number 2, 3, and 4, abstain. And D number 30, page 22, also no.
I'm sorry, that was D number what?
30, page 22.
D 30? Mrs. Backo?
I'm going to vote no on number 30, mine's page 23. It's under personnel. And I'm going to abstain on the policies.
Okay. Mr. Bashada?
I'll be voting no on number 30, page 22, And also, and number 36, Dr. Aguilas, I'll be voting no on that also.
Why did you say Dr. Aguilas?
Why?
Yeah.
I've been following this. I mean, he's gone out for so many different, what would you call it, the training sessions. I mean, you know, it just, it seems like every other meeting he's going out for a training session.
Okay.
That's why.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes, I just have to abstain on number 16 on personnel.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes, with the one abstention noted. Thank you very much. Delegate to the New Jersey School Board Association, obviously, the state aid piece has been a large piece of discussion. The other piece I'll be sharing with the board this Friday, and it kind of dovetails with some of the discussion we had at our last meeting regarding the pay-to-play and equity, and I talked about how equity is kind of the up-and-coming issue and is going to be an item that's going to be around the forefront of discussion for the next in the foreseeable future. I got a great document on the board's role in equity, the administration's role in equity, teachers' role in equity, and the community's role in equity from the Tennessee Association of School Boards that I'll share with the board. Just some reading material for you to think about how we all work together to address equity in school districts. And that's all I have. Moving on to any committee reports.
Well, I could go over a little bit of finance. I mean, we discussed most of the finance in Dr. Labby's report, but just a couple of other things, if I may. So we're not, depending, of course, on the audit, we're the capital reserve. It looks like we're going to be putting $1 million for cap reserve, $250 in emergency reserve, and so we're not quite sure of maintenance yet?
Right.
Is that accurate? Okay. So Dr. Labby also elaborated or talked about a few projects that we were thinking about doing in capital reserve, and I'm just going to give you a few more if I may. So we wanted to finish or do the final phase with the Arlith windows. We think that's important. The last Truman petition has to get done. If anybody's been there, you have to get it done. There's not even a question about it. The baseball field, we have to commit ourselves to that. I spoke with some baseball people, and they want to play their home games at Sayreville. So we have to take care of that for them as well. Some boilers at Slover and Arlith, high school and middle school. Are they all on their last legs here? Is that what the issue is? Or
I don't know
Is
that
it
I'd
just
say that, but
just in case they?
they're older equipment.
Okay.
So the time is coming.
Gotcha. The middle school locker rooms, Mr. Syak said these things are ancient, they're awful. I have never been in one, but, so we have to do that for the kids. And some door swipe upgrades was another possibility of spending some of that money on that. And I think that's it. That's really, everything else was covered in in Dr. Labby's report.
I just want to commend the Finance Committee. I thought everyone did a great job of, in a short time, finding some real concerns that we knew we had at the school and really targeting them and doing a nice job of finding where that money should go. I hope everybody understands, it's exciting to me that we're being able to finally complete some of these projects, but we'll never recoup the money all the other years we were underfunded. I mean, it's hard to imagine how far along we would be if we were funded adequately all these years. And I think it's a credit to our teachers and our administrators who have constantly done it for less here and have done a great job bringing a great product to the people of Sayreville for the money they pay. I mean, we're always in the bottom of amount of money that's invested in the kids here, and you get a great product, and it's only going to get better, I think, with these funds, and I think it's going in great spots, and I think it's an exciting time for Sayreville, I think, and hopefully we keep moving forward with this type of, we're still not getting, as much as but we'll take it, and hopefully we keep moving forward. So it's exciting. But again, I just wanted to thank the administrators and teachers for what they've been doing for all these years on less, doing more for less. So good job.
It's interesting. Thanks for that. And Dr. Labby and Ms. Sill deserve a ton of credit. I have to tell you, there was an awesome responsibility on where this money should go. There's never an easy decision on this. There's so many needs. But I have to tell you, I don't know about you guys, when I left that finance meeting, I was damn happy. I mean, to spend $2 million, man, on stuff we need, it was a really great feeling. So, and good job. You
And
guys
all
did-
the areas that we touched on, I
Thank you.
think was great.
Yeah.
The
Spread it
also-
nicely,
Said how the
right?
band
It
never
was,
got-
yeah, yeah.
I also think the key point for all of us on the committee, as well as Dr. Labby and Ms. Hill, was that these are things that we were going to have to go out to a referendum. And now we don't have to do that and put an additional tax burden on the district. These are things that we can do now with this extra funding, so it's a win-win.
Excellent point.
Any other committee reports? Okay. Any other board business?
I have one thing.
Okay.
Oh, do you want to go first?
Oh.
Wait.
You don't, if,
It's just a question. It's not, I know the AP scores are out, but I haven't seen anything, or do we have them organized yet in a report?
I'm going to be sending out a summary. We had a Student Achievement Committee meeting the other night. We reviewed them, and I'll send that out to the entire board.
Okay, and will you have the comparatives
Yes,
of year over year?
yes, I,
Okay.
just like I've done
Just
every
like you've
year, I
always
have a
done in the past.
comparison going back.
some real positive results.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
I'll wait for the results.
I have two things.
Okay.
Number one, I mean, we have a new change in leadership at the middle school, and Mr. Golhusky reached out to me a couple weeks ago and asked if it would be possible for him to make a change there with regard to the mascot at the middle school. And I thought it'd be a good topic of discussion for us. Currently, the middle school mascot is the owl. I don't know how that happened.
I
Mr.
do.
Syak,
I
I'm
do.
sure
I
knows
do.
the history. But Mr. Golhusky would like to be able to change that, from the middle school Owls to the Sayreville Middle School Bombers.
Okay, so first of all, by way of history, in 1985, a great class was coming into the middle school in 1986, and it would become the first sixth grade class because prior to that, it was the junior high school. And Mr. Walsh and I were both part of that class, and the students, in order to bring them into this new building, were asked to create a mascot, and the owl was the winning mascot. So
I think
that's
the
how
fix was in. I don't know how it won.
So that's how the owl was created.
All right, pardon the pun, but who was the person that thought of owls?
Well, we were a scholarly bunch.
Yes, yes, it was, yes. I'm
So
sure it was
Mr.
all
Walsh
about
wanted
me.
some sort of band or something
Yeah.
like that?
Are there any strong feelings about changing that on the board?
No, and I would mention, I think all our sports teams usually wear uniforms passed down that are bombers anyway,
Correct.
and to go as bombers, or it just makes it easier when we're giving something from the high school down to the middle school.
Does
that
the high school
go
have a
with
mascot?
Bombers.
They're the Bombers.
To the
That's
Bombers.
it, so that's it, it's just the
Yeah.
bombers, yeah.
They're
I
really,
didn't
yeah,
think
the
there
middle
was-
school are the Owls.
Right.
They don't
But-
have any, they don't have any uniforms that have.
Yeah, but they don't, yeah.
They just say Sayreville on them, they don't.
I don't think there were any, because when junior high, some of the sports left originally,
Right.
and then we did have a wrestling team, I think, at the time, and I don't know what else we had at the middle school. But they didn't go, they never went by owls.
Yeah, I think it was
as
just wrestling
sporting
and maybe
events, so it was-
basketball.
Right,
That
so it was kind of a.
But yeah, we were never the Owls. It was
So-
just,
It was just on the sign out there.
it was on the sign and on a nice little gray homework folder that you got.
Yeah.
That's basically the only two places that we used it.
I think so,
Mrs.
mean,
Rubio
that
remembers
was
this.
a vote. I think they should vote on it, though, like at the middle school. I don't think we should make the decision. I'm not objecting to changing it, but
The principal would like to do that, so who on this board would be opposed to it? Anybody? No?
There is no opposition.
All right.
You can
I
tell.
know grammar schools have changed it, but I don't think we've
I will-
voted on it ever.
Well, I
You-
mean,
you can tell Mr.
I
Gillespie
think
works
I'm
for a
trying
board
to-
who
Grammar schools
supports
have
the
changed.
bomb.
I
They
wanted
don't
to
have
make
teams.
this known in a
Grammar
public
schools don't
meeting,
have teams.
but I also wanted to make you folks aware so you could weigh in
Oh, so
on
nobody-
this change, just in case.
Right.
The grammar schools, I mean, middle school, it's a little bit bigger, so
And
I
two
just
of the
wanted to make sure
founders
you
are
were
here,
okay
so
with it.
we're okay with it.
And I bet people don't even know that there is an owl at the middle school. I bet.
If you look at
I
the
actually,
sign, I
believe it or not,
noticed it.
I actually have a T-shirt.
Really?
It says Sayreville Middle School Owls.
No.
I do, I have a T-shirt.
Were there middle school owl teams?
No.
No.
No,
do
so
have
No,
what
it
was
was
the
just-
point of the owl? What did you do with it?
I might
It was-
even
it was
be
on a
wearing it
gray
underneath
folder.
my shirt right now.
I believe it was when all the PTOs and PTAs started having homework books and folders and things
Yeah.
like that. So even at the elementaries, they
Well, the elementaries,
voted.
I
They
see it
voted
frequently,
on
but I
like a
don't ever
mascot type
remember
thing.
a
But I
presence at the
think
middle
that was
school.
following the junior high, the middle school.
Right,
I
it was
really
Sayreville
did.
Middle School, where everyone is treated with.
Respect.
See?
There you
Never
go.
goes away.
And I have
And
one
Mrs.
more.
Rubio remembers that
This,
too.
this one,
You know the
this
school
one
song,
is
though.
of a bit more serious nature. Not that that wasn't of a serious nature.
Excuse me, our mascot is very serious.
I know. Now that we are replacing the turf field, and now that we will soon be replacing the track, currently, we lock the gate for the stadium, but there is no signage up there with regard to people using our turf fields. I know that Mr. Kommensberger has reported to me that he's driven by and had to chase off like people using the fields illegally, having soccer games with referees and everything. So I think it's really important that we come to an agreement in terms of who is going to be able to use that facility without a permit. Now, naturally, if someone gets a permit, whether they pay for the permit or if it's Sayreville Recreation, and they don't pay for it because of our relationship with Sayreville Recreation, that's one thing. But I think we need to put up signage that tells the public who can use the field and who cannot use the field and what would be the consequences of using the field when you're not supposed to be using the complex. So what I'm basically asking is, do we want to allow any members of the public to use the field, the complex? Do we want to just say no trespassing unless they have a permit? Or do we want to specify who can use that complex and when?
You know, it's interesting. I don't know if it'll hold up in court. I wish Jonathan was here. But just from a liability standpoint, regardless of what sign we put up, and I think we should personally not allow people just to use our fields, but if someone really gets hurt, they're suing us.
We still are, but the problem, my previous district, we had the same issue. We ended up putting up signage that said there's absolutely no trespassing.
Okay.
That way, when there were large groups of people on there, we could have the police come down and tell them to either get off the field or they're going to be arrested and get a fine for using the field. They're trespassing on our properties. Now, did we go ahead and enforce that policy for individual people that wanted to jog around the track and so forth? No. But we had it up there just in case there were large groups of people that were using that complex. So it's a discussion that we need to have in terms of, because you can't tell somebody to get off there. You can't have the police go out there and tell someone to get off the field or they're going to be arrested for trespassing unless you have signage. You have to have at least giving them notice with the signage that they are not allowed on that property. So I think we need to determine who's going to be able to use that field and when,
I wonder if
or
there's.
the complex.
I wonder if there's any opportunity to, and maybe there's not, maybe it's too complex, but could we have, a sign that said maybe, or work out something with the town, where maybe between the hours of 6 and 8 at night, the field's open to joggers and walkers, barring no sporting event, I don't know if there's early morning hours, because it is a facility that we're proud of, that's beautiful, we want to keep up, we don't want it to be used the wrong way, but it also, the town is, it has kids here, pay taxes, I wouldn't mind having and I don't know if that, a certain hour, but look, Old Bridge is a different situation, because they do their stuff half with the town and half with the board when they do a project. But if you go out there right now, I guarantee you, there's people in the town of Old Bridge walking around their track, they have the lights on, and it's kind of a nice thing to share. Unfortunately, we don't do things that way to start, so it comes only from our pocket, so it makes a more difficult complex. But I don't know if that's too complex of a policy to have, where we could still share the facility, not the sporting events on the field, but when we have a new track, walking or jogging on the track, between the hour of boom and gates are closed, anything after 8 o'clock is trespassing.
Sunrise and sunset or something.
Something. Again, I don't know if that's
To a certain degree, you can be. Ms. Badami shared with us a couple of samples of signs. Some a little bit lengthy, but still enough to get on a sign. So it doesn't have to be as simple as there's no trespassing allowed, period, unless you have a permit. You can be a little bit more, flexible with regard to it, but I do think that we as a board need to come to some kind of agreement on, who's going to be able to use the field or the complex and who's not.
Doc, is it possible to put some type of swipe card access and video recording out there? And maybe what we do
You
is...
do know that his heart now is like beating out of his chest, just by you saying that.
I'll start with
Well,
the
let me finish
video
the-
recording now.
Let me finish the question. So that, if people want to jog around the track, they've got to apply to the board for a permit. We charge a nominal fee, $10 or something. It's good for a year. Then we know who's coming in, going out, and you've got video in case there's any issues. It might be a way to open it up to the community and not...
And I don't know if it's even that simple, because, again, we've locked the gates, and people just hop the fence.
Gotcha.
And they have these games, so, locking the gate is kind of silly anyways, because the people are just gonna jump the fence. In fact, you lock the gate out, when you're locking the gate, you're really stopping that person that lives in the neighborhood that wants to jog around the track, that doesn't feel like hurting themselves jumping over the fence. But it's not gonna stop the 30 people coming here
Right.
to have a pickup game of
So what are
soccer.
you recommending? Maybe let's start asking the question that way.
I'm recommending that we as a group decide on who are we going to allow to use the complex? Do we want to say that you can only use the complex if you have a permit? Do you want to give a little bit more latitude saying that residents are allowed to use the complex to jog, or use it individually? Residents of Sayreville are allowed to use it, but there are no group games permitted on the field. To that extent, we can go a little bit.
I like that option.
Yeah, I think
I like that
no
a lot.
organized games on there.
No organized
without
games
a permit.
Without a permit.
But
I
it's
like
open to, but we'd also spell out, but during school hours, you're not permitted to be on it.
Right.
During off-school hours, you are, if you're just here to jog around the track, or if you're just here to run up and down the side, whatever on the field, but any group organized
Group
activities are not permitted without a permit.
So I'm thinking you need a policy.
I would think it would help us to have a policy. Sorry, I know.
No, that's right.
I think that's.
And I'll get it to the board, more than 24 hours in advance.
And we don't, that's not one we have to have by the beginning of the year, but I do think we need to start thinking about protecting that investment.
Yeah.
12 years, you all know, some of you were on the board when you built that
Yeah.
field. 12 years comes fast. And if you allow people to get on there and abuse it, there are times when I've been out there and people have baby carriages out there on the turf field, high heels on the turf field, all kinds of things like that on the turf field that are not permitted on the turf field. So we want to really protect that field. Now, if we're going to put a new track in too, we got to make sure we protect that as well.
Could you, you said you had examples, do you have them digitally? Can you send them to us
Sure,
to look at them?
I can do that in my next summary. I can send you some of the pictures that Jimmy has
Just
sent.
for an idea?
Yeah.
I think this is a good way to protect the investment, but also share with the taxpayers
Yeah.
the
Correct.
field. So I think
Yeah, no, I like
it
the
eliminates
And
both.
back to what Mr. Esposito said, yes, is there a chance someone jogging around the track trips, falls, hurts themselves, and it becomes a insurance liability for us? Possibly. Is there a greater liability, though, if there's a pickup game of soccer and it breaks out into a brawl, and kids, or people get seriously harmed during it and so forth? Yeah. So,
Even someone hopping the fence to use it could fall off the fence. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
a million things that we can't,
Yeah, it's true.
and by the way, that example I used happened in my previous district. And that's why we had to go to something like this, because there was a pickup game with referees and everything, and a brawl broke out where people got seriously injured during it.
Mr. Bishada.
Two things. First of all, when that field was first put in, I came across several people using irons out there hitting golf balls on
Yeah,
the turf.
that doesn't surprise me.
And you know what happens, we had spots that were worn out, from contact. We had soccer kicking in one specific area. Second thing that I would recommend and suggest is that we can actually put signs up, a big sign in different locations, several of them, of what the usage may be for.
That's what we're saying.
If-
Yeah.
if,
Yeah, that's what we're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
and, we can restrict what you can do, and if they're caught doing the violation, then we'll have the authorities handle the situation.
And, for the police, they just need to make sure there's proper notice given to people. If you don't give proper notice, then there's very little they can do. As long as we give proper notice, then we're okay.
One other thing, I have always seen people walking their dogs through this facility
And on the
without a
fields?
bag.
On the fields?
Well,
Without a
dogs
bag.
are actually
By the
prohibited
fields.
on school property,
On the
with
field,
or
too?
without a bag.
Well,
No, like in the stands and stuff?
I've said
Is
that.
this after school hours, I'm assuming?
Yes, this happened several weeks ago after a board meeting. There was an individual walking his dog, and I asked him to please remove his dog, and he started cursing at me, like who to,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to go beyond that.
Do we have signs here about, no dogs allowed? I think we do, don't we?
Along Washington Road.
Okay. They stole the signs?
Sayreville kids always get us to the signs.
Okay.
Jimmy, who let the dogs out?
All right, any other items for discussion?
On that trend of signage, did you ever find out about the drug-free school zone signs that don't exist in front of some of the schools?
We ordered those. Yeah.
Drug-free school zone.
1,000 feet.
There's none up by Truman and there's none by
Oh, I think we
Eisenhower.
brought that to their attention, though.
It came up at the
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They-
Okay.
we-
We'll,
Yeah.
Put it outside the rehab place.
you know
Yeah,
what,
put
Mr.
it- it's
Esposito,
gonna
we'll make
wind
sure
up
we
right
put
in
that
front
on
of
our
the
next,
rehab place, for sure.
Security?
safety and security meeting.
You got it.
Yeah, because that definitely came up during one of our
Okay.
meetings.
Any other items for discussion? Before we open up the public, I just want to take a moment to introduce our president of the class of 2019, Brielle Trinidad. Hopefully you are Brielle, because otherwise I'm going to look really stupid. All right? Brielle is also a delegate to the American Legion Jersey Girls State program this year as well. So she had a chance to attend Girls State, and she called me on the phone to talk to me about the role of the Board of Education and wanted to come to a meeting and see us in action. And I hope that we've shown you good governance as you learned in Girls State. So, welcome. It's a pleasure having you here.
And I apologize for all my poor humor.
I do have one thing. I wasn't quick enough.
Sure.
If I may. So I wanted to know if we were interested as a board in honoring one of our own, Connor McCabe, honoring with a resolution. He's achieved the rank of Eagle Scout, and next, I believe August 4th, he is going to be honored with some of his other fellow Scout members. And I guess I would, if we say yeah to that, I guess I'd give him the option as to whether we want to present that evening in front of his family and friends and all his other Scouts, or if he'd want it done here at a board meeting. So I just wanted to see if you guys were okay with that.
I know that we've honored him twice already.
Yeah, he's doing well. He's having a good
We honored
year.
him when he completed his Eagle Scout project over at the Arla School.
Yeah.
And we also honored him as one of our student recognition recipients this year.
That's correct.
That's right.
So he's a wonderful young man.
Yes.
Anyone opposed to recognizing his formal Eagle? Because we haven't actually recognized the award. We just recognized his work with the project, correct?
Right.
Yes. Anyone opposed to recognizing him? And we'll give him his choice whether he wants to come here or do it at the Court of Honor or both.
Or both, yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open it up to public for any item concerning the school district. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening. I'm Susan Frondelli. I live at 9 Stevenson Street by Truman School. You have property behind my house, and it's been many years I've been living there, and over and over again, there's issues with the trees. They are not being attended to at all. I've got poison ivy growing through the fence area. My son was just missed 2 days of work because of the poison ivy, because he tried to mow the lawn. It cost over $50 in co-pays and medicine for him. And I'm just wondering, is there something that you can do? Because the last time the tree branch fell, it cost me over $100 to repair it. When I called the Board of Ed and they came over, they said, act of God. And I said, aren't you on notice? Now that tree has finally been removed, but it's about maybe 10 to 20 feet off the property. They just cut it and left it. So now it's just going to become a termite infestation. I don't know how to get to anyone to help me.
I believe we discussed, is this the same, this is not, okay, all right. So then, I think the person you need to speak to is Mr. Coleman'sberger, who's our Director of Buildings and Grounds. He is right there next to the pole, and he will take a look and see.
I do know somebody came out last year when they were cutting the tree last year, because I have paid to have your trees trimmed and just paid it out of pocket. But the last time, they told me it was $1,400 to
Okay.
trim the tree. This tree now is growing 50 feet across my property. It's going to hit my house soon. And I've been there 32 years. I just would like you to clean up the mess that's there. I don't know what else to do.
Okay, you can speak to Mr. Coleman'sberger
And we have her address.
you have, okay, and we will see what we can do about that. We actually just dealt with another tree issue, so I thought it was your tree. Okay? I will listen, you guys can have a discussion. If you can't resolve it, please feel free to come back or speak to Dr. Labby.
We'll work on it together.
But we can resolve this.
Obviously, I can't speak with him because I've had issues with him prior.
All right, then you can speak to Dr. Labby, and he can absolutely help get this resolved. Okay? But thank you. Anyone else for public? Sure. Just need your name and address again. I know it's a pain.
I only have 2 of these when I came in, so maybe it's in another page, but I was just looking at a transfer for the student assistance counselor to school counselor. I'm just wondering if that student assistance counselor has been replaced with someone else. Is there going to be a SAC counselor in the district?
Yes.
Okay, I was looking through all the transfer twos and I couldn't find another person who took that position. I just wanted to make sure that that was going to still be.
Basically, what happened is we had a school counselor position open, and that's one that our current student assistance coordinator was interested in filling. He will fill that position, but now we'll need to replace this position.
That's what I was asking. Will that
Yep.
be replaced? Great, thanks.
Anyone else for public? All right, hearing none, we will close public. Thank you very much for coming. Our next meeting is is August 28th, 2018. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Mr. Walsh, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Bloom, all in favor? Aye, opposed, carried.